Dodge That Bullet Podcast. This is Adam.
This is Isaac.
Are we going to go around the table?
This is Kirkland.
This is Aaron.
James.
So we got 6 dudes and 3 mics. And this might get awkward. But
6 dudes, 1 cup.
Yeah. We're going to try and make this work.
One on your face.
Glad that James is back with us. Been a little while.
Yep.
Quarantine could only last for so long.
That's right.
So
He had to quit.
Came down from the hills with my glorious new beard.
yeah.
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 Looking good.
So we've kind of been fishing for things to talk about because we're kind of tired of talking about the same old stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
So we figured we'd kind of dive into the marijuana issue today. So
What's the issue?
I mean, that depends on who you talk to.
Yeah, that's a good.
You
question.
know, but
You're looking at, James, you're looking at getting your card maybe because of your recovery.
Well, I have a
And you
qualifying
wanna-
condition.
Right. Do you want to remind people what you got going on?
Well,
I know you hate telling it.
for our long-term listeners, the guys who won the Doritos several weeks ago,
in
I
Finland,
have a nerve condition that left me paralyzed from the neck down, and I've been recovering for almost 2 years, and which is literally peripheral neuropathy. I can't talk today. That's my qualifying condition. They made me nervous when they got quiet.
Yeah. I know.
yeah,
Quit listening.
yeah. The women folk are in
But there's
one room
definitely-
away.
Definitely the numbers show that would help with your recovery, especially since you're trying some new stuff with physical
pain
therapy.
and the physical therapy and recovery. There's benefits that could possibly exist. So it's something we decided for that for that and many other reasons, just to talk about what's up with that.
Exploring options.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what's it?
What's up with that?
But honestly, what's it going to hurt? When you weigh the pros and cons,
Nothing.
you know what I mean?
The only thing that I've ever found with studying anything about marijuana is like just with combustion, you have certain things with just the smoke, but there's plenty of other ways to take it that you don't have that.
Brownies.
And even if you do smoke it,
We're going to have
there's-
to be very deliberate about talking into the mics. Not
Scoot
hitting it
on
with your
over here.
face.
Yeah, my bad. I'll lean up over here.
Yeah.
Lip the
and-
lip, guys. Lip the lip.
Yeah.
And so my biggest thing, we're both in addiction studies, James.
Yeah.
Much better.
My biggest issue, when it comes to marijuana and studying the history of legalization with drugs and narcotics and all this stuff, it is so infuriating how many people have been addicted to opiates and have died to opiates that could have gotten help from a substance that is not really addictive. You have to have chronic high dose use all the time to even maybe get addicted to something like marijuana.
Yeah.
Whenever you can take opiates once and you're hooked for the rest of your life.
Right.
And so, but they have the same properties. Marijuana isn't going to be as strong as a pain reliever as opiates, just how it works, but it does help. And you don't have a lifelong addiction now you have to deal with. And it's so frustrating whenever you look back of the things that were ignored with research and science about marijuana because of whatever was going on whenever Nixon started the war on drugs. There's a lot we can talk to about that,
Sure,
but coming around, I'm glad now we're in a position where medical marijuana is even a possibility. And, in a lot of places, recreational, to each their own with that. But at least the opportunity for medical marijuana, I think, is really important for, moving forward with a much, I guess what I consider a much better alternative to pain relief management.
I agree. I think it's a better alternative than for pain management than it is for like you said, opiates or prescription medications that we're seeing devastation.
Absolutely.
Worldwide from the use and the addiction to those substances.
Yeah.
Now, what you're saying earlier about the route of delivery to get the benefits of marijuana, yeah, nothing about smoke inhalation from any source is a good thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's bad. Whether it's cigarettes, house fire, whatever you want, smoke's
Yeah,
not
it's
good
not
for the
great.
lungs.
House fire.
But that said, you also have to weigh the routes of delivery for edibles or whatever the case, because those are processed through your liver and they actually have a different effect than an inhaled dose.
So Finch, you've been pretty open about your alcoholism.
Yeah.
So
Wait, what?
it's the first I've heard. Compare that kind of to the effects like that. The big deal right now is like the opioid epidemic.
Right.
Yes.
So just running through my head, just when Kirkland was talking about that, I was like, there's a lot of similarities there, as far as like,
Yeah.
the
Alcohol's way deadlier.
than opioids.
Or no, than cannabis.
Right. But I'm just kind
I
of,
thought that's where you're going. Sorry.
no, my bad. But, no, it's just kind of, I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, the personal effects of what a lot of people are going through now because of pills. And I would think there's a lot of similar, and not, it's personal, it's financial, it's not even getting to what it does to your body.
Right.
Because a lot of that stuff's processed in the same way, and it has the same physical harms to the user.
Alcohol and opiates.
Does it not? I'm just kind of talking out my ass right here, but does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm the only thing I can tell you from personal experience is that I never had to be hospitalized and to detox off of weed.
Yeah.
And not that I even use anything anymore. I mean, I take CBD sometimes because I'm 45 years old. I like to work out. It really does help with anti-inflammation. But as far as something that alters my
joint issues and stuff like that.
as far as something that alters my consciousness at this point in my, I know some people that do use cannabis as like they call it marijuana maintenance. I know tons of people that haven't drank in years, and that's their program and that's what they do. For me right now, I just don't want to do anything that alters my consciousness because I'm kind of deliberately seeking a more conscious contact with my higher power,
Right.
So I don't want to do anything that would jeopardize that because I'm kind of on this natural trip,
Yeah.
But as far as like, are you asking? I don't really know what you're like. Are you want me to compare the two from personal experience or?
Well, no. I guess that just like popped in my head, like some of the things Kirkland was saying. I was like, it sounds like a lot like we hear so much about the opioid epidemic and all that stuff. That just sounds.
There's an agenda behind it. It's not just the like Kurt and James touched on. It's not just the plan itself that's been demonized, and that's for a reason. Because you wouldn't want somebody that to go that route to heal themselves of some type of ailment when they
You got an industry like Big Pharma.
right.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
That just takes us down a whole other rabbit hole of why we're in freaking Afghanistan and things like that. So
Well, just the criminalization aspect of this subject matter that's a whole huge ball of wax. We talked about this earlier before we started recording. Alcohol is legal, tobacco is legal, but marijuana is not. Tell me which is the deadlier.
It's
of those
unbelievable
three.
when you look at the number of deaths.
Yes.
It's unreal.
So I'll be devil's advocate here. So when I was younger, the people that you work for the man, dude.
I said we're the man right now.
Oh, I didn't hear
We
that.
just
We-
really lean over.
When I was younger, the people that I knew that smoked weed on a regular basis.
Watch out, Kirk. He'll throw an arm around you in a minute.
Yeah. Y'all be hugged up. Yeah. Oh, Lord. We good.
good.
Yeah.
I got a short end or something.
Yeah. You get $30 microphones. That's what you get.
Yeah.
No, the people that that smoked marijuana regularly that I knew of, I mean, I'll just say they didn't have
Productive lives.
They didn't go blind.
that high of a standard of living.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that may sound kind of judgmental on my part, but but I'm not going to tell somebody, hey, that's what you need to strive for. You know what I mean? Because you look at that and you think, if they just quit smoking dope and get cleaned up and get a job, they could better themselves.
Right.
And a lot of people just choose not to do it.
There's a little bit of a stigma involved from our generation, but there's also, lazy people don't need incentive to be lazy no matter what it is.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
That's true. I think the lifestyle and the consumption of the drug kind of go hand in hand sometimes, but I really think it's a person-to-person basis. If you're going to be lazy, you're going to be lazy.
Right.
If you're going to smoke pot and be productive, you're still going to be productive. You're just going to be high sometimes.
You can
I think it's really person to person, but there is that similarity that you see a lot of the time, and I think that's just kind of a culture thing almost.
Yeah.
And I think it's really just people not wanting to get out of a rut that they're in.
Yeah.
Yes.
We were talking earlier, and I told them that I'd smoked marijuana before. And I've told people in my family this, but the reason I quit smoking was just because a lot of my buddies that were smoking, like you said, the action comes with the lifestyle in a sense. They started acting like different people.
They started falling off maybe.
Yeah, or I was just like, y'all weren't like that 2 weeks ago. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
So I was like, this is stupid. I'm not doing it.
So were they almost act like they were just a different person, change their personality? In a way?
For lack of a better term, they just act like a stoner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd be like, hey, y'all didn't laugh like that
Because they were stoned
2
all the
months
time.
ago.
They were
Yeah.
me. That's what happened to me. I said, see, I do everything in excess.
Well, there's
and I'm
a
not
bit-
saying it was the weed's fault, but
There's a bit of a character that people think they have to play that goes along with it.
Yes.
Absolutely. Have you ever been
Yeah.
around
Yeah,
a bunch
for
of high
sure.
people? If you haven't even smoked, you might start to giggle a little more. You talk about setting and how it does affect whatever kind of substance you've used.
But then it went from if we were just partying or whatever, everybody's just having a good time. You know what I mean?
Well, it
But
can
then-
go from having a good time into a ritualistic thing, just a persona change almost.
Yeah, but then it goes from everybody's having a good time to everything's a secret. Or, oh, we can't talk about this.
people
Or
get paranoid too.
Yeah.
Like if you have a paranoid person like myself, and then he smokes weed, if I already think the government is coming for me, what am I going to think if I get really high?
Those
it's
assumptions
over.
are just
It's over.
confirmed. That's what happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just know the truth now.
I hear the TV talking to me.
I'm kind of just throwing my 2 cents in there. What turned me off of it? You know what I mean?
Right.
But now as I get older, and I'm interested in maybe getting in a little bit better shape, feeling better, and I keep hearing the benefits of compared. I am allergic to codeine, so I can't take. Anytime I've had surgery, dentist prescribed me hydrocodone one time, took half of one, threw it up. Had foot surgery, they gave me Oxycontin, whatever.
Yeah.
Took half of one, threw it all up. So I got over foot surgery taking handfuls of ibuprofen last summer.
Which is hard on you.
Well, that's good for the liver.
Yeah.
It might as well have been whiskey or something, But no, but that did. I know exactly what you mean when you say the action comes with a lifestyle in a way, but now things are different. We're talking about
Being young and immature.
20-something years ago when I was running around being stupid.
Yeah.
Because now I would say you'd be surprised who smokes marijuana. No, you probably wouldn't. In a lot of cases,
There's
Look,
some
you
that
kind of see.
There's some that you would be surprised by. I've found that in life. I was in the same boat as you, and I tried stuff when I was young, and I'll be perfectly honest. I liked marijuana, and I didn't really care for drinking very much. But I started to see people around me
Off the
who,
old block.
but I started seeing people around me that I felt like, well, these guys are going to be on their couch forever, and I don't want to be that guy. So
Right.
that, in my mind, was part of the reason I decided to let that go and move on and do whatever it was I felt like I needed to do to move forward.
Yeah.
But what I learned through life is whatever it is that you're taking that's a substance that alters, whether it's alcohol, whether it's, pills, drugs, whatever the case may be, what those things do is enhance or exacerbate any underlying psychoses or conditions that you already have.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have somebody that's going to be paranoid, they were probably a paranoid person to begin with.
Right.
And that's going to influence that further. So first thing you have to know is you have to have some real true knowledge of self-awareness before you can embark on anything.
Check your motives.
Yeah,
What are you doing
check
this
your
for?
motives. What's the purpose? The reason I'm talking about it now as a medicinal thing, however many years, decades later since the last time I tried it, is because it's actually something that could possibly help my condition.
Right.
It's not because I want to, sit.
Just get high.
I don't want to sink into the couch and giggle at cartoons. That's not what it's about. So
Not every
It
day.
could be.
I mean,
Well,
once in a
that could be a side effect, but it's not the intended purpose.
Right.
Well, that's the thing. It could be like sinking into the couch and laughing at cartoons, or it could be to numb pain or something. But I think the difference in the world today is that people are understanding what they can get out of it, as opposed to what everybody seemed like they were getting out of it back in the day. You know what I mean? Like, you just seem like you're high and you're a hippie loser and stuff. But nowadays it's like, you get cannabis because you have joint pain, or you get cannabis because you have a day off and you just want to waste the day off and sleep or something. Like, everybody's getting something beneficial out
I
of it.
never needed pot to do that. Just for the record.
Pretty good. Regardless.
But yeah, I think in today's world, I think we're starting to recognize the value that it has to each individual. And I think a lot of people now are being less irresponsible with it. I'm not saying everybody's just smart with it, but I think we're getting to a point where we're starting to recognize that we can utilize it.
Well, that's moving past the stigma that's been created for all of us for all these years. We're all conditioned to have this certain mindset about marijuana as a subject and as an idea, when it really comes down, just like personal responsibility with alcohol or anything else. You drink when you drive, you're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So it all comes down to what really is the person's responsibility who's going to use this.
When you
But what if you don't remember driving?
Does it count?
And then you're safe.
that's bad.
That's just called
Jokes,
being
people.
lucky.
We're joking.
For the record.
Do not.
And I will say that I have done that in my young days, and it's not cool.
It's not cool.
It's
I'm
one
joking.
That is one of that and lost time are a couple of the reasons that I did decide to give that up when I was a young guy. So
You talked about the stigma kind of attached to cannabis or marijuana. Here's the deal. If y'all have listened to our podcast, I mean, our research goes about as deep as a Google and a click. So
I've got tons of research. What do you want to know?
well,
there's life experience research in there.
yeah. Well, this is from. I just thought this was pretty interesting. This is from drugpolicy.org.
.org. That means it's
And
right.
at the top, it's got a box that says, "We are the Drug Policy Alliance." I don't know what that means. I'm not endorsing this group.
That's the fun police. That's what the fuck that is.
We know
like
those
a great
guys.
cult to me.
Yeah. But so I just Googled, like, how did marijuana become illegal? And somebody somebody said
Hurst.
so, here's the question. Apparently this is a Q&A article, whatever. With so much information coming out about the medical value of marijuana and that marijuana is not as dangerous as alcohol, why was it made illegal in the first place? So this is the answer they give. This is an excellent question. Now that many politicians and public are taking a more objective look at marijuana, many are asking about the legal history of marijuana and how it ended up in the category of drugs deemed most dangerous by the federal government. I mean, it's federally, it's still a Schedule I drug, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Schedule 1 up there with heroin.
Yes, federally it still is.
Okay.
Cocaine is Schedule 2.
Just making sure.
What's wrong with a little blow?
Priorities, people.
It's not as addictive.
That's a different podcast.
Yeah.
So what's the
Tune
deal
in
with
next
blow?
week.
That's a great episode.
To understand how
What do
we
you want to know?
I just like the way it smells.
Vince just leaned over the table, looked at Isaac. He said, "You want to find out, boy?" Back to the article. To understand how we ended up here, it is important to go back to what was happening in the United States in the early 1900s, just after the Mexican Revolution. At this time, we saw an influx of immigration from Mexico into the states like Texas and Louisiana. Not surprising, these new Americans brought with them their native language, culture, and customs. One of these customs was the use of cannabis as a medicine and relaxant. Mexican immigrants referred to this plant as marijuana, while Americans were very familiar with cannabis because it was present in almost all tinctures and medicines available at the time. The word marijuana was a foreign term, so when the media began to play on the fears that the public had about these new citizens by falsely spreading claims about the disruptive Mexicans,
Yep.
Well, that sounds familiar.
with their dangerous native behaviors, including marijuana use, the rest of the nation did not know that this marijuana was a plant they already had in their medicine cabinets.
Yep.
The demonization of the cannabis plant was an extension of the demonization of the Mexican immigrants. In an effort to control and keep tabs on these new citizens, El Paso, Texas borrowed a play from San Francisco's playbook, which had outlawed opium decades earlier in an effort to control Chinese immigrants. The idea was to have an excuse
bringing
to
opium to
search,
America.
detain, and deport Mexican immigrants.
Dave's not here.
You hadn't even gotten into the industrial side of why marijuana,
So that excuse,
aka cannabis. See, we're not even using that. That's how deep this propaganda goes. We're not even using the correct terminology. Aaron's,
paper manufacturers wanting to shut down hemp fields and things like that.
Right.
Is that what you're talking about?
yeah, when when we were first founded, when we were a colony,
Textiles.
it was actually
Yeah.
required that they grow hemp.
Yeah.
Because they needed it for the rope and the sails of
Yeah.
the ships. You know.
And well, in 1914 with the Harrison Narcotics Tax Act, that was included in marijuana. They called it hemp. That was taxed on a lot of restriction were placed on that. Following around this whole time, with the industry and people coming in and having, that was right after basically the first opium epidemic with China in the late 1800s, and then you get more people coming to America. Again, people bringing. Not saying that
Fair trade.
China brought opium to America, but
just returning the favor.
about the late 1800s, we started getting some more opium
They
and
built the
cocaine.
railroads
And,
and gave us opium in the same
Yeah, the British brought opium to them, got them hooked on it.
Yeah.
They were just, they were just continuing as intended.
yeah,
Is it?
East India Trading Company, yeah, they took
Yeah.
it. That's how they took
The
over.
EAC, man.
Anytime you want to destabilize a nation, you have to have opiates involved. That's what I'm saying. This whole thing could lead to why we're in freaking Afghanistan.
Well, it's no mystery that once we took over Afghanistan, we controlled the largest poppy fields in the country in the world. I mean,
what are you saying, Isaac?
And then we had an opium epidemic after that.
Yeah,
Is that what
what's
you're
up with
saying?
that?
20 years later, I
saying
mean,
it got
we're
really
like,
cheap
hey,
to
there
make
seems to be a
hydrates.
problem.
yeah.
There might be a connection here.
For the
right.
past several years, talking about the dangers of opiates,
Yeah.
overdose, deaths related to overdose. So self-inflicted injury is what that's considered. Has killed more people than car accidents. Well, it's not self-inflicted injury, accidental injury or something.
Accidental overdose.
Well, it's injury due to an accident or something. So overdose, car accidents, opiates, COVID-19.
Right.
Yeah.
Opiates are killing more people.
Yeah, man, I tripped and fell the other day right into some COVID-19.
How are you still with us, man?
Strong like bull.
You've been drinking that bleach.
Anyway, sorry, I got
No, you good. You good.
No, but I mean,
It goes further than that when we get into 1970s.
Well, here we
That's
go.
okay.
Here we go. The excuse to detain and deport Mexican immigrants became marijuana. This method of controlling people by controlling their customs was quite successful, so much so that our prisons are still overrun and, well, never mind, sorry.
Over half
So
the
much
people
so
in
that it became a national strategy for keeping certain populations under the watch and control of the government. During hearings on marijuana law in the 1930s, claims were made about marijuana's ability to cause men of color to become violent and solicit sex from white women.
Right.
That
the
was
big
during-
government was saying this officially.
That was during the whole
Yeah, they used to have
hemp paper
commercials
wars
stuff.
and all. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because we've seen the posters and stuff,
Yeah.
and yeah.
Well,
Weed
wasn't it like
Madness.
1932? They made that movie Reefer Madness.
Yeah.
Everybody's just
Yeah.
smoking pot and
It's
going
on
crazy.
Showtime.
Yeah, it's on Showtime. Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my
100%. That's
gosh.
what that movie
Now I'm
was
going to
about.
touch on.
It was just propaganda.
It was propaganda, but that's anyway.
Give me two more paragraphs, and then I'll be done with this. This imagery became the backdrop of the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937, which effectively banned its use and sales. That is ridiculous. We think things are crazy now, but anyway. While the act was ruled unconstitutional years later, it was replaced by the Controlled Substances Act in the 1970s, which established schedules for ranking substances according to their dangerousness and potential for addiction. Cannabis was placed in the most restrictive category, Schedule 1, supposedly as a placeholder while then President Nixon commissioned a report to give a final recommendation. The Schaefer Commission, as it was called, declared that marijuana should not be in Schedule 1 and even doubted its designation as an illicit substance. However, Nixon discounted the recommendations of the commission. Marijuana remains a Schedule 1 substance to today.
Schaefer's our home.
Federally.
On a federal, yeah. So even as in the last few years, all these states have just for recreational and for medicinal use have legalized marijuana.
Yeah, we need the money.
It's still a federal one.
Well, Schedule 1.
Schedule 1.
1 drug according to the federal government.
yeah, federally.
with heroin.
Now,
With heroin.
so
The federal government, anyway.
and just one thing I want to make clear too, and all that seems like it's a pretty legit information.
As if that happened.
like I said,
Yeah,
our research here goes
Did you get that from my Wikipedia?
Google and click. Oh no, I was on your
Wall Street
Wikipedia.
Dress,
Your
public-
Wikipedia is totally different.
Yeah.
now.
I believe it was
story.
Nixon. Public
Yeah.
enemy number 1. What are
Well,
drugs in
can't-
America?
But
Red ribbon.
But one thing I do want to make clear too is just the fact that it's illegal. You know what I mean? And when I went back to when I was talking about like, okay, I would discourage anybody from getting involved with this substance because of like, how I viewed people that the standard of living of people that were heavy marijuana users.
Yeah.
It's illegal too. You know what I mean?
That's
Right.
that's the discussion as a father to my son that I've had is, I don't have a problem with marijuana itself. The problem is that it is not a legal substance, and there's risk involved with that.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's the only thing they've gotten mad at me about. just
Yeah.
just the fact that it is still illegal.
yeah.
Yeah. And also, guys, y'all are pretty young, and
Well,
there is a danger. Involved when not so much. I would say cannabis, but like
it's a
anything
developmental
stronger
issue.
than that. Like I wouldn't necessarily encourage y'all to do edibles or any other psychedelic at this point, because you could definitely blow a fuse. Because I've done it. So
Well, I'm just finishing up a psychology class that I'm doing. It's a lifespan development. I don't know if you've done that one, but it's I did a paper actually on the effects of marijuana and adolescent development.
Yeah.
And the deal is that especially with males develop later. We're not really kind of fully formed until early to mid 20s, and so there's still a risk factor involved there with changing or inhibiting just natural development. You can actually alter the course of those things.
Yeah.
So it actually at that stage can be not beneficial. It can actually be detrimental, and there's of course it comes back to frequency of use and things like that we talked about before. But in the studies that I read and I wrote about, there's higher incidences of psychosis like schizophrenia, things
Yes.
like that, and memory loss. There were some cases of 19, 20-year-olds with memory loss, the same as middle-aged or older people.
Yeah.
And I can speak to that now as a 45-year-old man who can't remember his ass from his elbow day to day. So, and it doesn't have anything to do with smoking pot when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
So
Well, a lot of it has to do with the family history too. Know your family history.
or
'Cause
it
my
might,
mom
I
was
don't know.
schizoaffective,
Yeah.
and then I smoked a buttload of weed. You know what I mean? There for years. And
So
did
how
some
much is a
psychedelics.
buttload
I mean, a
exactly?
lot. Yeah. I don't know how much.
Several.
I mean, I was the wake and bake guy there for a long time.
A buttload is you keep stuffing it in until they say stop.
Right. I mean, it wasn't nothing for me to. I mean, in the height of it, like I would smoke an ounce in a weekend.
Yeah.
In a weekend?
Yeah.
oh
full
my,
ounce.
oh my god!
Like 28 grams.
Yeah, man.
What?
Like,
Wow.
sometimes
that when
I'd
you
have
were
some
living
help.
in-
But
Is that when you were living in
OZ
Austin?
was a weekend.
no. When I lived in Austin, that's when my tolerance got really high.
But that's not good either.
That's
But,
crazy.
Were you
Yeah.
in Florida? Or
No,
were
no.
you in Arkansas?
I'd moved back to Arkansas.
Okay.
But yeah, when I lived in Austin, see that was the thing. All right, lived in Austin, Texas in 1997.
I'm just trying to
97.
tie that to my John Finch stories.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like we've got Florida
where's the
Finch,
lineup?
and
See, I was getting
Arkansas
that-
Finch, and Austin Finch.
Right. See, I was getting that good government weed down there. You know what I mean? And so I moved back to Arkansas, and it's seeds and stems.
Do you know about Chicago Finch?
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
That's a different guy.
That's a different dude
I
too.
don't know if I've heard much about Chicago Finch.
He was off the rails too, but
He saw the leprechaun.
yeah, but he did. That's why later on in life I saw that story about the Birmingham, Alabama, the leprechaun in the tree. I was like, man, he moved. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've seen that.
He's
dude.
making his way down to Florida to
Yeah,
retire. He just ain't making it there.
Right. But
Leprechaun's a snowbird.
But see, that's the thing. I moved back to Arkansas. I had to smoke a lot of weed because it wasn't near the quality as it was.
Dude, I went to Las Vegas. Talk about quality. I went to Vegas. This is the first time I've ever smelled like medical grade marijuana. I went to Las Vegas with some friends, and we had some friends from LA that met us in Vegas.
Yeah.
And we all rented a house for a week, and we were out in front of the Bellagio or whichever hotel it is with the big fountains in front of it,
Yeah.
And we're sitting there and we're waiting on the water show, and I'm just leaned over the rail, and I'm like, there is a freaking skunk in the middle of Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm like, that is crazy. And I'm looking at my buddy from Arkansas, and I'm like, they got skunks in Vegas, man. And then I turn around and look, and a couple of our buddies from LA have got look like a pill bottle.
Yeah.
And then one of them's hitting a one hitter, and I'm like,
Oh.
I forget what I said about the skunk. I'm like, nah, okay. I'm like, good gosh, where'd you get that? And he's like, it's good shit, man.
That's how I was in Jamaica. Dude, we were in Jamaica when my family went and we stayed at a resort. And once you got off the resort beach, it wasn't like regulated. Dude, the most ridiculous, because like Finch said, we're from Arkansas. And for a while, it's not been just super high quality. Not that I am a connoisseur, because I grew up on the very legality side of marijuana, because I had a dad who, my biological father, was a hard drug abuser my whole life. And so any drug was bad if it wasn't from the doctor, pretty much is how in the household I was raised in.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that, James.
And so it just wasn't ever an option for me. Even when I was in college, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to smoke it. That may have changed in the recent past, but it's fine. And so, but we were in Jamaica, and dude, people just walking around, and I'd be like, there's no way that that's all cannabis. Because it would be like a cigar, and just be drooping at the end. I'd be like, that's
No, they got trees down there. dude.
unbelievable. It's crazy,
Yeah.
man. But what you said about how it affects adolescent development.
Yeah.
So I have a cousin who,
Good point.
a while back, he was 15, 16, and just started smoking weed. And it messed him up.
Yeah.
Our family does have some mental things, and his dad is a big pot smoker, but also has a few mental issues. Sark knows, maybe. How much do you know about my uncle?
Dude,
Wild.
I've known him longer than you have.
I know. So, anyways, so my little cousin starts smoking, and dude is having like major like skits episodes, and like running away, thinks people are after him.
Go missing for 2 weeks at a time.
Yeah, we had no idea where he was.
Yeah.
And so
What?
and so that was kind of the side I was on for a long time, and still
Yes.
very much am, because like some people, they can do it when they're kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Some people like him, and to this day, like he's still, I mean, he's messed up about
That
it.
whenever you
And so
get
it's-
into
it's crazy.
You got to smoke
like
past
how
that.
lifespan development, whenever you introduce that at that time, there are some things where some people that it does affect them in that way.
Yeah, I've been there.
Absolutely.
I joke, but I've been there.
Yeah.
Well, and I talked earlier about the exacerbation of existing or issues or hereditary things, even
Yeah.
genetic things. Like Finch said, schizophrenia is has a strong presence in his realm. In my family, there's a lot of depression and early onset dementia and things like that. You're just you're throwing gas on a fire.
At that age.
At that age.
Well,
To if nothing else, you're upping your chances.
Exactly.
not even marijuana. How many people do you know that are 18 to 20 that can drink responsibly? You know what I mean?
Zero. The answer to that is none.
Yeah, this guy didn't.
Negative.
Right. I mean, it's like not to just totally disagree with Isaac, but like some people can handle it at a young age. That's probably not a very high percentage of people that
True.
are using it.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody should be using this stuff unless you have a reason to use it, really. You know what I
It
mean?
is different
Yeah.
for everybody, but
Now,
best case scenario,
If you're-
just to be safe,
Best
be
case
24, 25 years old.
If
Well,
you're
and that's an
responsible
age
and-
where you start to have some real self awareness too about
Exactly.
what
And-
the
and
decisions
'cause that
you're
goes
making.
back to-
Development is
not-
more stable.
Yeah, not just a legit mental, medical and conditions, but we're talking about when we get into little higher doses here. We're talking about edibles and psychedelics and stuff like that. You're talking about access to a spiritual world that a lot of people aren't ready for at that age.
Well,
okay,
you're accessing areas of the brain that most people don't.
Right.
Don't activate, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I've been to other dimensions. You know what I mean? So, and it ain't for the faint of heart, guys. I mean, it's not.
Those spirit walks can get pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, dog, you see the size of that chicken?
Yeah. I mean, it's.
No, and I'll say this too, kind of to the effect of what Kirk said about some folks at a younger age. I'm the things that I've been saying also have to depend heavily on frequency of use, how heavy and how frequent. Experimentation is one thing. I honestly don't see a problem with experimentation, and nothing that I read in my development paper, none of this research that I read, it was all based on frequent use.
Yes, not with this
Yeah,
substance.
if you're an experiment, if you're trying it out with buddies once or twice, whatever, it's probably not going to do that much to you, except show you what it can do. But frequent use, anything repetitive,
Chronic high dosage.
chronic high dosage, and just like when we overeat, it's
Air
the same,
quotes.
same
Oh,
thing.
exactly.
So, yeah. Overeat for a long time, you put on 20 pounds since the last time I see these
Yeah.
guys.
Something I think is absolutely wild. While Isaac was saying, you don't take anything that the doctor doesn't tell you to take. You know how many freaking kids get addicted to opiates because they're 15, 16 and get their wisdom teeth cut out?
Well, also, my uncle broke his nose when him and my mom were kids, and the doctor shoved a swab of coke up there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what do doctors really prescribe? So,
That doctor
Yeah,
likes
and-
to party.
And I think
What do you think that doctor's life was like after work?
if he's giving kids
If he's like, just get you a hoot of this, boy, you'll be all right. It's like,
oh man,
I probably hung out.
I am.
Then a different guy comes in and he goes, "Who's that guy?" I was like, "I thought he was the doctor."
I thought it was. I'm high on cocaine.
And the doctor's like, "I've never seen him before."
You talked about frequency, and I'm kind of like, how many people, adults or whoever, can come home from work and just have a beer. You know what I mean? Or I know people that can do that. I know people that have an issue with that. And I'm not trying, I'm just making a correlation between habit and.
Why are you hard-eyeing Finch over there?
Because he's staring me down. That's why. No, but I'm just saying, like, I guess why is it a necessity? I mean, I'm not. I kind of want to be clear. I'm not just saying, hey man, it's perfectly fine to come home and just light up a joint every day. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just, you know what I mean?
Well, I think with that, it's when you talk about it medicinally, or even, I'll just stick to medicinally. It is kind of the same as taking medicine. Whenever, some people who may have some anxiety,
right.
It helps to calm them down, get them to sleep. It helps with pain, and there's certain things you can take like in the morning that don't really get you basically that high, but it will take you through the day, and then maybe at night you take something maybe a little stronger. There's pain management plans basically, as you have with all kinds of different things.
Time, dose, and frequency. That's medicine.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you take 2 pills twice daily or something. It's in this. It's applied in the same way.
But that's usually for 10 days. You know what I mean?
Well, not necessarily. There's some people who have chronic pain. That's the thing with chronic conditions. When you get in the danger, especially with opiates, I will always go back to that of chronic use. It leads to nowhere good. You develop a tolerance very quickly, and it hooks you hard.
And it does other things too. When you're talking about opiates,
absolutely,
it messes with your bowels, and you get sick from
your cognitive ability.
You can't pass. You can't pass the material, and you get toxic shock. From being backed up from opiates. From opiate constipation,
being septic in a way. Or?
Yeah, you go septic.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So I had back surgery a few years ago. And they prescribed, it was 1,000 milligrams of Tylenol or ibuprofen, and then Valium to help me relax so I wouldn't move around. And I accidentally doubled up on a Valium one time. And at that moment, in my life, I made a pretty conscious choice to never do that again.
Yeah.
Because, gosh, it was.
Are benzos opiates?
No, they're benzos.
No.
What's the difference?
They're different.
Yeah, I think
Not even about opiates, but just about a hard prescription medication that
Narcotics.
comes a very small dose, but is very effective. And I was like, dang, this is rough. And I pretty much put it away and just stuck to the ibuprofen because addictive potential runs very deep within my family tree.
Yeah.
And it was just, I did not like it at all. It was unbelievable what I couldn't do. When you look at your arm and be like, move arm, and it doesn't move, I don't like it.
Move arm.
Now, I want to follow up on that because there's something very important I want to say about, I talked about, I'm checking in to get my card for, to help with aspects of my condition that is a qualifying condition. I have a lifetime. My history is I'm a child of 2 alcoholic parents, and I watched the devastation that it brought not only into their lives but into my life and the rest of our family around them. It was, and then my mother and father both extreme alcoholics when I was a child. And I mentioned before we started recording about possibly becoming a ward of the state at one point. That was in part due to that. And then I get a stepmom who is heavy into drugs, and not just marijuana, but everything, and dealing it and everything else. So there was always an element of danger around and devastation in my childhood years related to drugs and alcohol. I happen to have a pretty, for all my experimentation and everything when I was younger, and for all my thoughts about what I agree with, what I don't agree with, I'm very, very much a teetotaler when it comes to booze, especially. But even with marijuana, which I'm okay with, in a measured practice. And you talked about, what's to stop somebody from just one joint or 8 joints, whatever. Nine is a lot. Tom Segura said in a special. Yeah. But that goes back to personal experience, and I said all this to illustrate the fact that I could, if I have a drink now, the first thing that's on my mind is what drinking did to my childhood. If I take pot, it's the same thing as taking the aspirin that I took before this because my neck was hurting. You know, it's something that I can pick up and I can put down, and I know that about myself.
Yeah.
Or that I wouldn't take on the responsibility of trying this as a route of medication.
Yeah. Goes back to motives, being
Yes.
honest.
Yeah.
Being honest
Yeah.
with yourself, too.
Yeah, that's probably a lot of. Thanks for saying that, dude. Just
Yeah.
for being so honest there. That's kind of the point. I was dancing around, just being real clumsy and incoherent about getting there.
Yeah.
You know. But
But there are also people who romanticize anything with drugs and alcohol. They romanticize the character, the persona, the just the whole act of it. It's an art, whatever it is that it's a lifestyle, and when it becomes more about that than it does whether this is a benefit
Why you're taking
or a
it.
detriment to their life.
Yeah.
And I
You never
think-
know that I might lead. I might be saving you a chair at a little meeting I go to, So,
yeah, that's kind of an issue we all deal with. Just not substances, just any type of behavior.
yeah.
It's always influenced by
Yeah.
something.
And I've openly volunteered this to anybody who's ever listened to me. I didn't escape an addictive personality. I do have an addiction. I happen to feed my depression and everything with food, and it's the easiest thing that most Americans do. That's why we're the most obese country in the world. Is when I get sad, I eat, and to my own detriment, and I don't have a shut off. And I know exactly when they talk about an alcoholic who takes a drink and it opens a floodgate of chemicals and then there's no control element there. It's the same thing that I experience whenever I don't even know I'm eating sometimes, I'm just sad or I'm just bored or whatever the case is. And so I totally understand the element of addiction in that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I have a bigger fight on my hands, not putting, not throwing down on some carbs than I do whether or not I'm going to have one joint or 9 in a day.
Yeah.
I think it's actually kind of interesting because I when I'm feeling down or something, I feel more forced to go away from food. Like sometimes if you're not feeling
I'm
right,
happy-
you're just
I'm
not hungry
happy
or
about
whatever.
that.
I think that's interesting because you're my father. You think that maybe I would have the same kind of issue, but I think
You're more like your mom.
I guess I am more like mom. That might be part of it. But yeah, actually, when I'm like sad or
In that
anything,
way.
I actually just I can't really eat. I don't get hungry or anything. So that's
Yeah.
kind of interesting. How
Well, you have
we
her
differ
higher
in that way.
metabolism too. She blessed you
Oh,
in
yeah.
a few ways.
I'm gonna be skinny for probably a while. So
Everybody,
Well, see, that's how it was
everybody
when
on the
I
icing
was
side
young,
looks
Aaron.
like me.
Whenever I had anxiety and stuff, then I had no appetite whatsoever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's actually how, when it goes back to check your motives of why you're doing something. See, whenever I drink or I take a drug or I do anything, I'm doing it because I don't like the way I feel. I want to change the way I feel.
You're altering your headspace.
Yes.
Yes.
Because I've for as long, I don't know, maybe my whole life really, I just have never liked. It's very hard for me to be comfortable being me. In my own skin, and so
That comes back to the self-awareness.
right. I have to be told.
self-acknowledgement thing.
I have to be sober and constantly working towards this, spiritual life. To get past all that, and that's why I'm real careful not to knock anybody that. If somebody hadn't drank in 26, 27 years and they use marijuana as maintenance and it's helping them, then that's fine. That's just not where I'm at with it. You know what I mean? Because I don't trust myself right now. Plus, I don't want anything to take away from the
The sober
spiritual
Yeah.
awakenings that I've been having since I haven't been drinking. Because alcohol, without a doubt, I used to think it was all these other things, but no. Alcohol, without a doubt, is my number one. You know what I mean? It's socially acceptable.
That, yeah.
Which is the craziest thing on
it
earth
is
to
the
me.
craziest thing.
You know what I'm saying? Plus, I'm the guy that typically, and you guys know, 9 times out of 10, I can drink with the best of them and be just fine. But every once in a while, and I never know when it's coming, that one drink, and then I'm blacked out. And we're all, and the people out there is like, never blacked out. Be grateful because it's, you go, you go to sleep and your brain goes to sleep and your body's still ready to party. So it's a scary deal.
Yeah. Well, and then it's a whole other realm of things happening that you're completely out of control.
Right. Yeah. And I joke about it because that's kind of my way of dealing with it, because it's like that's a terrible feeling to wake up the next day.
Well, the best humor
and
comes
not know
from pain.
what happened or where you're at.
Yeah, and having to scramble, calling Adam, being like, "What happened?" Well, I left you in your bed.
Yeah.
With a sore ass.
I was not there for that.
Hey, he said your name. I was
No, I actually, the reason she was so mad though was because I pissed the entire bed, and she came in. She
You
thought I
walked
was
in the
dead.
house.
Wait,
though.
that's wrong?
Did I walk in the house?
Yeah.
My brother has a story.
I'm supposed to piss the bed.
Yeah, you walked in the house.
Oh my god.
This will tell you the extent of my adult experience with marijuana, because I'm going to reference Willie Nelson here.
Yeah.
But you talked
You
about
smoked it out of an apple?
you talked about you need to tell him your story about D and the tree log.
Yeah, I will.
Willie, you were talking about dude's been off alcohol for 26 years.
Yeah.
Like Willie Nelson said, hey,
Yeah.
if I hadn't started smoking marijuana,
He'd drink himself to
that
death.
other stuff would have killed me a long time ago.
He's like me,
You know.
bourbon. He's a
And
whiskey
he
guy.
turned
You know what I
87
mean?
the other day.
Yeah.
So,
You find those stories all the time.
Yeah.
And I would say also with opiates, with practicing a much safer alternative and opiates, but especially like you said with alcohol, finding an alternative that is safer and provides you with, I guess, more effective benefits in a lot of different ways. You don't get the side effects from being high on oxy or getting drunk on alcohol. You don't get those things from marijuana.
so
Considering the frequency and dosage.
my family is full of alcoholics and drug addicts, which is fine. It's just, I feel like everybody's probably is,
Hey, man,
honestly.
my family, too.
Well, I know, but my immediate family. But I have an uncle who's somewhat of a celebrity in Rosebud. My Uncle D, and he is who you would picture.
Oh, Uncle D. I remember him.
Dude is a stoner, like has been forever. Like an old hermit, lives in a pull behind camper with his dogs, and walks over. Dude's awesome.
That's the life.
But he, one time I was over at his trailer. We took him some food from a church thing. He said, "Hey, I got a present for you. I said, "Okay." D used to give us stuff when we were kids all the time, like little knick-knacky things, just because he has a fanny pack full of stuff. And he brought me 2 Zippo lighter fluid cans, and he had made bongs out of these Zippo fluid lighter cans. He had a big one, and he had a little one. And I said, "Well, that's pretty cool, D, but I'm not going to take those because I don't know where they've been." So I left. And my ag teacher, when I was in high school, was telling the story. I know. Was telling the story, and D was in Heber.
week making those bombs.
I bet he took an hour to do that. He probably did that in an hour before I got there. But anyways, he used to go to Heber in the summer and sleep at the camping areas around the lake because it was warm and it was by the lake and there were people, and he likes to mess with people, honestly. And he was walking, and my high school ag teacher, who worked for the quarter in the summer, saw him carrying like this big stump. And he's like, "What in the world is D doing with this stump?" And he said every once in a while, every couple steps, D would lean down and take a puff. And he had kind of a shoot coming up off this stump. And he would just, he'd take him a drag and he'd blow the smoke and he'd just keep on walking. And D had made a bong out of this tree stump. And my ag teacher didn't have the heart to take it from him. He just let him keep it. And I hope he still has it.
And later he
because-
wrote the song on Ren and Stimpy that goes, log, log.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's honestly too been my experience with drugs, has been my Uncle D, because he pretty much just one day decided he was just going to quit working, and he did, and then from then on he's just been on a bender more or less. And because there's no doubt in my mind he probably smokes more amounts than
Most.
anybody every day.
Yeah.
That's
Because that's what he's used to, and that's how he gets along. So
a good segue into a point. How much is too much? I think that's a good thing to talk
Too
about.
much. He definitely-
because
yeah.
there is such a thing. Yeah, marijuana may not have some of the detrimental effects. Alcohol is poison. You're poisoning your body.
Yep.
Marijuana is not that. But is it possible to OD on it? I don't know if OD is the right word, but you can have too much. You can have too much of anything. And one of the things that led to me at a young age to stop fooling with it is I actually lost time. I mean, you talked about blackouts earlier. I actually lost time for a few hours on a couple of different occasions, and it scared me really bad. And in one occasion, I happened to be driving. I don't know how I got from Fayetteville to Clinton, Arkansas.
That's crazy.
Yes. And
That's not a 10-minute trip up the road.
no, that's a 3-hour drive.
That's a haul.
Yeah. So
You lost 3 hours driving.
yes, and
That's
a couple other
nuts.
times I lost like 3 hours sitting on a porch, and I didn't have any idea what had happened. That's too much, and it is possible.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about things in measured doses, time, dosage, frequency, whatever, it's very important to note that I am for that. When you take anything to excess, it's not good.
I guess that's one of the things that really turned me off too, was because I had a group of friends that basically grew up with. We were all pretty tight, and not all, but a handful of them, we went from drinking to smoking weed, and then some others went to taking pills, and that went to meth, and then that's escalated for some of them into some pretty dire circumstances that they're in right now, you know.
And those are the folks that they make the gateway drug argument about. And
Right.
those cases do exist, but is it a blanket statement? It can't be.
Well, that was very much my biological father, which
Yeah.
is why my mom took that such hard stance,
Right.
because this leads directly to that, and
Yeah, and
For
that's
some
what
people,
we
it
were
does.
talking.
Yeah.
and that's
Well,
why
I
I've been
think-
so hesitant, and even trying I'll have a beer,
I'll take a drink.
I'll take a
I'll
drink.
take a drink.
Yeah.
I have no.
I will do it too. Have you seen that video?
Yes, I don't have any catch-up or any hang-ups with alcohol.
That guy's me.
I don't have any.
Yeah. I don't have any hang-ups with alcohol. I'm very much the guy who can get home after work, drink one beer, and just be done. Just because I like it. That's what I like to do.
Yeah. I had one beer one time.
Yeah.
I was full.
Yeah. But I don't know.
You're the kid in that meme.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's true.
I don't know my tolerance or my personal ability to handle, for instance, marijuana, because I've seen directly how it affects people in my family. It's like I'm just now getting to the point where I'm kind of like, well, maybe I'll be okay, but maybe I'll go off the freaking rocker. And so I've just been very deliberate and careful with what I have done. And so far, it's not been bad. So, I mean.
And that's the awareness I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You are self-aware enough to know that there is that chance, and is it worth taking?
Mm-hmm.
You talked about losing time. I remember a couple of buddies that this ain't about me, fool.
Dang it.
A couple of buddies of mine had, we were all living together, and they'd been gone for a day or so, and then they come back, and they're just laid out on the couch, And I mean, this is early in the morning.
Yeah.
And then I probably went somewhere with my girlfriend or went to mom and dad's for a day. Came back that evening, they're still laid out on the couch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The next day, I get up and go to work. I come home from work. Guess what? They're still laid out on the couch.
They're living that lifestyle. They're playing the character, though, right?
No, they had not woke up.
Oh, whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah, for I think it was 30-something hours.
Wow.
So I mean, and at some point I'm like, are they alive? And they're like, yeah, they're breathing, and
Yeah, dude, be a better friend. Call the ambulance a few hours earlier.
But no, eventually they woke up, and I don't know if they just been up for days at a time and just crashed really, really hard. But me seeing that, I'm like, okay,
Oh, you're talking about meth.
Yeah. And at the time, I correlated marijuana with all that other stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Well,
I
again,
was
that's what
like,
was kind of
okay,
being pushed with the indica.
here's where my cutoff is. Drinking beer is great.
Right.
The rest of that stuff, we're cutting it off right there.
I think with several different substances, particularly marijuana, you understand, and when you experiment and start to develop a pain management program, basically, I guess is what you could call it. You discover basically the point at which you are receiving the benefits, and then that's probably where you should stop.
I think there's a healthy thing to be said for finding out how much is too much.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, overdo it, but I'm also saying, how else do you know your limits?
And
You
the
know what I mean?
frequency.
On one hand, go out and just get blazed out of your mind.
Yeah.
On the other hand, maybe take
That's
a slow.
probably the best way to do it, to be
Yeah.
honest.
At
Well,
least
it's
once.
like, I don't know if this ever happened to any of you guys, and it didn't happen to me, but I saw it happen to a cousin who got a little kid. When we were little kids, he got caught smoking a cigarette, and Grandpa made him smoke the whole pack.
Right.
And he was
You
sick
hear
as a
that all
dog.
the time, yeah.
So he knew his limits at that point. At a young age, he's like, that's too much. Now, I'm not saying do that. I'm just
Dude, I was over
half-ass
it.
making a joke here.
I was over at Kirkland's house helping his dad and his grandpa build some steps. And when we got done, we got in the pool and his dad lit up some cigars. And we had a drink and smoked some few cigars. And apparently I inhaled too much. And I was sick as a freaking dog.
Yeah, they'll do that.
You know? And
Cigars will kill you too. Like
so I know my limit is any as far as smoking cigars now.
You know your limit on shits and grooving.
Yeah, I had a blunt one time that had been soaked in some formaldehyde.
Good Lord Almighty.
Where'd you get that?
I was told by a friend. He was like, only hit this a couple of times, and I was like, shit. You don't know me, dog.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm hitting this thing like it's a joint,
Like it owed you money.
and man,
Just real quick, did you say formaldehyde?
I told you I've been to dimensions.
You've been to every single dimension.
Yeah,
You went to all of them, man. What's it like out there?
It's formaldehyde, man.
yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's should have killed you.
Was
and
that the
preserved
limit?
you.
Yeah, that's the limit.
Okay.
So back to finding
I
your
will say I
limits.
went and drove a dump truck that afternoon.
That one went on the no list.
Yeah. Or at least I thought I did. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I was allegedly.
That is amazing.
That's what he
what
thought
I
he
had
did.
to
He was
do.
actually sitting on my couch doing beep beep.
Watch out.
I give him one of these every once in a while just to keep him happy.
Well, that's why I told you guys if y'all ever decide to you get your card and it's helping with your joints and your pain management or whatever, and then you decide that you want to step up your game and do some edibles, call me and I'll guide you through. the
See, and
realms.
that's a
You
different
are
animal.
a spirit
I've
guide.
been there.
Oh, Spirit Walker.
He's a shaman.
He is our
Yes,
walkabout guide.
shaman.
Right.
Walk
Our medicine man.
Yeah.
They really missed a major
He's a
slogan.
shaman, but his Yelp reviews are a little sketchy.
Yeah.
Right.
The medical
Listen, those things are influenced by, you can't believe them things.
the medical
It's haters. He had one
That's
bad
right.
It's haters.
one bad customer, and they write about that.
People hand out 1 star for any little reason.
Different accounts and usernames.
the medical cannabis companies have missed a great marketing tool, and they could have marketed their products as a joint for your joints.
Yep.
Like,
Wow.
I mean, I thought of that real quick while you're
so smart.
I know.
You should be an ad man, dude.
They missed a great opopportunity.
Are we sitting with Don Draper right now?
just
What's
gave
going
it
on?
away
here?
for free.
Yeah, what's up?
I know.
We just got dropped into season 4 of Mad Men, dude.
Copyright.
Because if y'all do edibles, that's basically I've done LSD too, and that's like it's not as strong as the psychoactive, psychedelic, whatever you want to call it, effect, but it's short lived and it gets you kind of close.
Well,
Wait,
if you
here's the obligatory Rogan reference. Have you done DMT?
Right, exactly. No, I haven't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind doing it. I mean, that's not off the table. I mean, one of the co-founders of AA, Bill Wilson, he was known to had to take a couple trips a couple times, but he was doing it as a it goes back to your motives. He was doing it to try to looking for the Lord. You know what I mean? Like he went out
He
there.
was looking for something already.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah.
That's a spiritual quest.
He'll talk. I mean, when I'm telling y'all, there's a spiritual dynamic to it. There's some. That's what we call it. There's something about it that we can't explain. When you get that far out there,
Right.
because you stop being, experience ego death, all that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
That's something that's really interesting when you talk about psychedelics and hallucinogens in certain dosages that are starting to help people with a lot of different stuff.
PTSD.
Even PTSD especially is a
Yep.
big one. Even addiction in some cases where people that they take a trip once, there's something that they connect with in their mind, whether spiritual, whatever, and they don't take another drug, take another drink of alcohol again in their lives. And so that's very interesting that I've been studying a little bit.
Well, that's
kinda
that
close
moment where they found their limit. They're like, nope, this is not for me.
Right. Well, see, that's kind of close to my experience. I mean, because James knew me back then, and so because after that, I was really wild back then. Okay, and then after I went on this one particular trip in '99, everything kind of changed for me for about a decade. I got married, had some kids, was about as responsible as I could possibly be. You know what I mean? I wouldn't do any more drugs. I wasn't really drinking. I mean, I was just I did kind of subscribe because my nerves were a little off. You know, after that trip for a little while, so I did take some drugs from the doctor. You know, to kind of
He did do a little too.
yeah.
I'll take a drink.
But yeah, every once in a while. But it wasn't anything like what I normally do. I wasn't partying, and so it wasn't until I got a divorce from my kid's mom that I went back to the spirit walk again. Testing out. I'm a scientist. I have to know things. You know what I mean? So there's something to be said about like, going that far out there and experience, what they call ego death. What it really is just like, I mean, you just you have to let go,
Ground control of Major Tom.
Yeah.
That's a pretty. I mean, you hear people talk about divorce all the time, but kind of like what you said, and I've been through it.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of get stuck in a position to where you got to re-find yourself.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like for years, my role was
Well, it's just like a trip, man. It's
husband, parent, provider. You know what I mean?
you cross that interdimensional line or whatever you want to call it, the portal. I mean, because there was the world before where everything was okay and you were married and you were safe and you had the kids, and then all of a sudden you don't.
Right.
It's literally a different world.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm just, how do you deal with that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I dealt with, when James was talking about food and stuff
I
like
drank
that.
a lot. That's how I dealt with it.
I
that's
think
something
I
that a
kind
lot
of
of
went down
people turn
the
to.
path James was talking about, you know. I mean, I put on a lot of weight after I got
Right.
divorced. A lot of guys do,
Yeah.
Well, it makes you for most people, it makes you feel good. Whenever you fill up,
Well,
or you eat a good
dude,
burger
when
or
you're
something,
when you're emotionally distressed
Yeah.
and you're in the middle of trying to, I mean, I'm not even gonna go into it. Good Lord Almighty, but if you can get that 15, 20 minutes a day,
Instant gratification.
yeah.
So
And that's a whole other thing too. Instant
Yeah.
gratification.
Well, that's what that's what alcohol does for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just
it's
like,
whatever's flipping them switches in your brain.
That's
you know
exactly
what I
what I
mean?
was going to say. Whatever flips your switch.
But and
feels
for
your man.
everybody, it's different.
And
you
I was
know?
about to say probably I don't want to say the most important thing, but one of the most important things I've learned in addiction studies is how subjective everything is between individuals, how they react to different
Every
substances,
person
how
you
they
deal
react to
with
certain things,
is an
the
individual
amounts.
case.
It is.
You know what I mean?
And
I mean that should sound obvious, but
Yeah.
but you don't
It's
really
not.
grasp.
It's
you
really
don't
not.
grasp the scope of that statement to you.
Yeah.
you
Well,
know.
when you say it should be obvious, that makes that I would say that in the same sentence as most people should know this. I think that's a big thing with marijuana that I'm glad we're about 10 years now. I believe it was 2010 around whenever Colorado started to go to medicinal. We're coming back to a lot of the truth and facts of, the true science behind it. And so this destigmatization about it is very important whenever it comes to how people perceive this, because stigma could deny James something that could greatly benefit him for while he's going through this recovery, and millions of others, just to be denied that because of the stigma. It's so dangerous, and I have a weird fascination with drugs, just knowing what they do, how they affect people. It's just a weird thing about me. And so I don't know. But so I use that, and I use that to, when I'm talking to people about drugs, because they still have a lot of stigmas, even with weed, of like, well, they smoke weed. I'm like, Yeah.
Yeah, we
Well, what?
They do.
they drove that stigma and that idea home so hard from all of our lifetimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
To that it's lazy, do nothing. It's a lazy do nothing drug.
Yeah, the biggest thing with Isaac and I,
especially like in the blue collar South.
yes, well, I would say the biggest thing with Isaac and I was that it was a gateway drug, and I don't think it's a gateway drug. I think the setting and again the motivation behind why you reached out to something first.
It's very important.
There is statistics. I mean, there's stats that we have about those who are incarcerated for heroin, illicit substance possession. Most of them do start with weed. Well, it's easy to get a hold of. It's not that big of a deal when
What they
you.
did before weed?
What's that?
What they did before weed?
Like
Probably take a drink.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
well,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. First thing, then
But
the
since it's
progression
legal,
of. There's no stigmatization against that.
It's not a drug until you check into rehab. For a lot of people.
It's real tricky.
The problems with alcohol are on the back end, Like we don't talk about the problems with alcohol. Everybody goes and buys a drink and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they get into these trouble and all that. And then all of a sudden on the back end, it's like you said, you're in rehab. That's when it's considered a problem or a drug.
Yeah, the image
Yeah.
that's the
They're
image
warping
that's,
it. It's so weird.
It
I don't know.
blows my mind.
the image that's projected or the if you want to call it for lack of a better term, positive stigma that goes with drinking is it's a party, it's a fun time, it's social, it's
Yep.
what you and I honestly, as a person who doesn't drink, I feel odd when I'm out with people who do drink. Like I feel like an outcast.
what do you do?
Yeah.
Like you're by yourself. You
and
don't
then they
drink.
look at me like, oh, you think
Pretending to hold a beer can.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, that's,
Happy to be here,
vodka,
guys.
Everclear. But anyway,
Yeah, to me, that's the real gateway drug. It's
Everclear.
alcohol.
Everclear.
Specifically Everclear.
Well, that's gateway into some heavy.
He's like PGA punch will start you on some shit.
You talk about the addictive potential there. I would say much higher for alcohol than it could ever be for.
I absolutely
Yeah.
think so. Yeah, I want to.
I think it's the real gateway drug, but everybody skips over that, like we said, because it's socially acceptable.
Because the government says it's okay.
Right.
Yes.
And that's my big thing. Back to opiates. So people don't bat an eye about taking hydros, oxys, anything because my doctor gave it to me.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
So it's got to
And
be okay.
government said, doctor said this is okay to take.
One of the most famous cases of believing that all the pills he was taking was totally worth it and totally okay, and it was because his doctor was giving it to him, was Elvis Presley.
Yep.
Now, there's one other thing I have to say. We can keep talking about whatever you guys want to, but my mind is the lights are dimming inside my dome, so I have to get this out before I forget it. The other real concern that I have is this is an odd subject for me to talk about because typically I'm not in for government regulation of things or all this kind of stuff, but in the case of marijuana, making it legal and having it where it can be manufactured and regimented and kind of you know what you're getting. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, that's the
because
positive side
bill
of
for it.
regulation.
Because
You don't want to get a blunt laced in formaldehyde.
that's right.
Yeah.
Dropped on you.
Yeah.
Well,
Because if you drop, and that's another thing.
I mean,
go ahead.
the
Finish
story
your
that
thought.
the story that I want to tell is of a guy that I know personally, went to high school with, who liked weed, was a casual smoker, not a high frequency smoker, and he got a hold of somebody gave him some laced stuff, and it was laced with some bathtub crank, some hillbilly crank, and from the age of 21 years old till this day, he's our age. He's been in a nursing home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's also the thing
tragic.
of what are you getting?
Right.
And where you have, where you do have what you have with regulations is, consistency of production and product and guidelines that they have to follow for what they sell. When you're buying it from, your guy or your buddy's guy or whatever, you're taking your chances.
yeah.
So
But even under regulation, there's still going to be like
you
innovation.
could just be buying parsley too.
Innovation. Yeah. And I think
Oh, yeah.
with innovation too, we've been able to separate, THC, the two active ingredients in cannabis with THC and CBD. We had talked about trying to get my mom to come on here. She actually petitioned for Arkansas to have medical marijuana on the ballot. So I guess I'll kind of speak on her behalf. Because when I heard that, it blew my mind. I'm like, my mom? Weed? What? She doesn't smoke or use it, but she's an occupational therapist, so she deals every day with kids who are coming from different states where it is legal, medicinally and even recreationally, where they have access to the CBD that has no psychoactive properties, but you get the benefits of CBD. One kid was having like upwards of 15, almost 20 seizures a day, I believe. And once they started on CBD, went to like 1 or 2 a month.
Wow.
Maybe. And that's when I flipped and started getting really frustrated with this person in my class who was totally against me. And I'm like, are you telling me that pumping this kid full of all these drugs that do nothing for them, do nothing for their seizures, is killing their brain and is making their condition worse, but is being pushed by a doctor to help, but it's clearly not. And then they introduce this one thing that's natural, not addictive, doesn't do anything psychologically. CBD doesn't have psychoactive properties. How can you say that's a bad thing?
Right.
And it's all back to the stigma of what's been told is good and bad, what's wrong and right. And I said earlier, I'm glad we're on the train now.
Yeah.
To where that is not so much the case.
Well, and the thing behind recreational use is really decriminalization, because there are people spending time for small amounts of this thing that are they're doing more time than child molesters and things like that. So
over 50% of the federal population and federal prison population is for drug related charges.
Right. And one last thing I want to say, if I can, I'm getting tired, so my points are getting weak, but as far as knowing what you get. Okay, so there's a big push with food. We talked about that as a drug or a thing that affects a lot of Americans, almost every, because we all eat. Absolutely. And some of us do too much of it. But what do they tell us? They tell us that to eat whole natural foods. Don't eat processed foods. Don't eat your chicken nuggies. And all that kind of shit, because the stuff that's in it. So
those GMOs, Isaac.
Don't even go there.
So, and I'm not trying to make the stoner argument or whatever, but God, the idea, whether you're spiritual, whatever, God gave us everything that we need in nature, whether it's food, fruit, and this medicine.
Yeah.
Is that better than some extremely highly convoluted chemical compound that is killing your organs, your brain, your whatever it is, and eating you away from the inside? Or do you take a plant from the ground and use it for its medicinal purposes?
Yeah, and I guess if we're hitting the yeah, absolutely. When you talk about
my
the
money's on the
spiritual
plant.
thing,
Plant sounds better.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, why do you think? Where do you think the term "this is good shit" comes from? It's from freaking mushrooms.
That makes
It's
a lot of
there.
sense.
It's there, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm learning so much
I'm not.
stuff today.
I hate to
thought you were
just
talking about the
like
rabbit
advocate for. I'm not like going Joe Rogan here and totally telling everybody to go out there and have a. And when I experienced like I did, when I say bad trip, what happened is that I went to a place that I was forced to look at all the negative things about me, or
Yes.
at least who I thought was me.
Yeah.
You know
And
what
you
I
have
mean?
to be
That's what
able
we
to do
talk
that.
about ego death.
Yeah.
We went from sitting around having a good time partying to all of a sudden it was like, whoa,
Is
we're
that
really.
is that what a bad trip is? Is that what defines like what a bad trip is? And I know trips are different for everybody.
I
I
would say
guess.
it's hard to
more of like
describe.
an uncomfortable experience, because confronting that isn't comfortable. It's not easy.
No.
I would say more of a bad trip
Nothing
is
about
you're
truth is
around
comfortable.
people who are screwing with you, especially when you get into hallucinogens. I mean, some
Well, yeah,
people see
that
some
can happen. I
wicked
mean,
stuff.
that's why I got away from
Yeah.
everybody. But somebody can't even. They don't even have to be really being malicious and messing with you. It's just if you're taking it that way.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
It's how you process
Yeah,
what they're
well,
Exactly. We
Yeah.
do that in
Yeah.
everyday
And,
life.
and
Yeah.
you take perception, you alter it, and then you make
Amplify
decisions
it.
based on it. That's it's everything gets sideways at that
Right.
point.
Yeah, your mindset is incredibly important
Yeah.
when taking any.
That's why it's important to have, like I said, if y'all ever do some edibles or whatever, have me there.
Yeah, talk you through.
You know what I'm saying?
20 minutes.
That's why it's important to have somebody there to kind of,
Yeah, that's
So when I ever
keep the train on the rails.
when I get
Yeah.
ready to take that next step, I know who to call.
The Ghostbusters. but also thin.
We have an in-house show.
Isaac, you're not taking
Yeah.
that step.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Mom, if you listen to this,
Yeah.
I'm not ever going to do that.
Oh,
Yeah.
damn. I'm becoming less and less popular with the.
No, it's,
With the
it's-
parental
they don't
units.
know. They don't know you. It's
Well-
going to be like, Adam, you're the one with the podcast.
That's
You're the one these guys are hanging out
all
with. What are you talking
Well-
about?
And I'm not advocating for it, but at the same time, I mean, if you have the choice between, taking regulated, government approved, I hate
Crap.
Opiates.
yeah, or taking something like
Well,
Dave said is more natural.
Let's see, and that's where my
That'd be the way.
my point about regulating marijuana and the production of it. It gets really hairy and really touchy for me there, because then it becomes a bastardized version of what it was. What it was.
Could be.
It could be. It could keep things clean and safe, but it could also turn into this. The same thing that they've turned
Well, that's
medicine.
why Alex Jones
pharmacies turn medicine into.
Smokes it every 6 months to see what George Soros is doing to the weed.
Oh my gosh.
It's the truth.
Here's the thing: if it gets government
He'll eat your
mandated,
I think he was telling the truth when he said that.
I think he was telling the truth when he said he'll eat your ass too.
definitely.
I'm measuring my neighbors up, y'all.
That's. Anyways, I think if it ever gets to the stage where it's government mandated or regulated, and I think it probably will,
I think within 5 years it'll be recreational.
it will go to, in the ag sector, which is where I work, it's already popular. Like in Arkansas, we already have people looking at, like the University of Arkansas has hemp demonstrations.
Integrity weed.
It's what they're called, is hemp demonstrations. Yeah. And so people are already interested in it. But when it hits, Bayer crop science, I think that's what you kind of talked about, like the bastardization of it is.
Yeah.
Is it going to stay marijuana or
Monsanto.
cannabis, or is it going to go through the changes? And Bayer is going to make their own strand. I mean, there'll be a Bayer cannabis just like there's Monsanto corn or Roundup Ready things. It'll be their strain.
Yep.
Yeah.
Will it be what it's meant to be, or will it be? It can either be really good,
Yeah.
or it can be really not good.
Well, and as it becomes a more mass-produced product, is it going to, how much Roundup and stuff are we going to be getting off of it versus the farmers that are growing it now and have been for years, because they're trying to produce mass
Exactly.
quantities.
Yeah.
So,
And are we going to be able to breed it to where they've bred corn to be, an ear of corn now we think about as pretty big, but it used to be an ear of corn was the size of your thumb and you couldn't eat it.
Yeah.
And so that's a good thing that's happened to
same
corn.
thing with strawberries.
Yeah.
They ruin those things.
Now they have ruined strawberries. That's awful. It's a disgrace.
It's a crime.
But what happened with corn was really what happened with a lot of our fruits is really good. They're resistant to a lot of these pests.
Yeah.
But also, they come covered in wax.
Yes.
And, all of our vegetables are sprayed with a bleach compound to keep them from molding, which is good, but also they're sprayed with bleach.
Yeah.
Which is why you're supposed to wash your vegetables.
Right.
And so the same thing is going to happen.
Yes.
And so, I don't even think it'll be a point of it'll be good or bad, but we'll have to take the good with the bad.
I think the science of breeding and all that stuff, that they've been doing that in California.
For sure.
I mean, they've kind of got that all squared away. It's the things we're talking about pesticides and all the chemical,
being more resistant, being able to grow in this climate, being able to grow here, and how much.
Mass production.
Miracle Grow, whatever.
I wonder who naturally in the United States of America, in the lower 48, I wonder who actually grows naturally the best weed. I know in Perry County, they grow some pretty good shit.
It's going to be Northern California.
You know what I mean?
It's going to be Northern California. They
Yeah.
outside
country.
of Mexico and South America, they're the biggest
It's-
suppliers
it's-
for the world.
It's the climate and the soil. It's why
Yeah.
they grow good grapes. It's
Yeah.
because their soil's good and their climate's right.
That's what the whole deal with the
'Cause
grapes and the wine and stuff. Yeah,
Arkansas
different regions.
has to be you can't just plant. Well, you could. You could just plant cannabis and it would just grow wild.
Oh, yeah.
You saying people don't plant weed around here?
No, that's what I'm saying.
You can grow it,
That's all I'm
but
saying.
if you're talking quality, it's a different.
Yeah,
Exactly,
right,
because I went to Costa Rica in the 7th grade, and we asked about, because Costa Rica doesn't have a military, because the United States, is their military.
Right.
They disbanded theirs, and then in exchange for the U.S. military, the Coast Guard patrols their borders
Right.
to stop, the drug traffic from
Right.
South America.
Until we decide to arm them,
to control the.
and then we go in.
Exactly.
We're like the bully and Shane.
Exactly. And so, we were talking.
Pick up that gun.
We were like, is there a lot of, marijuana production in Costa Rica, and they're like, no, our climate's not right. And we're like, what? Because like that's the number one thing. Like we have people from Roseville, they're like, I'm not going down there because of all the weed. Right. We're like, that's a dumb reason not to go on a cool trip, but okay,
Right.
And so and that's the first one that's like, our climate's not right, and Costa Rica's climate's pretty similar to Arkansas, like in the summertime, like the growing season. It's very hot, tropical. It's very humid, it's gross. And marijuana plants really like a dry. That's why they do well in Mexican climates and like the Andes, like in the mountains, because it's cooler, it's drier, and there's not as much fungal things with it. So that's why it does good in California, just like grapes.
I didn't even know that.
I'll say this:
I just knew where some patches were over.
People that have got into this stuff, I mean, they are like we were talking about the cooking show on Netflix.
Oh yeah, there's weedologists,
and they cook meals with weed, with cannabis, whatever, in one way or another. But then they can use the THC in one course to get you high, and then the next course they'll give you a CBD to bring you down or to level it off. And I mean, I'm sitting here watching this and listening to them explain it. And this gal looks like Flo that's been flipping burgers at the Rambler for 15 years, right. And I'm like, dude, like this gal has gone way deeper into her job than I've gone into mine. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I mean, this is blue collar delivery driver Adam talking here, but like,
and she's turned a blue collar job into like a scientific.
She's on a cooking show on Netflix.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's incredible to me. Yeah. I mean, and say what you want, but
we haven't even talked about the economic impact that it could have.
Oh man,
you know how many freaking schools and roads and hospitals Colorado's built, dude.
They go to Colorado
money now.
Every school in Colorado, every student has a MacBook.
Yes. Yeah, dude, they have money.
That's not an exaggeration.
That's crazy legit. Up there.
They have little MacBook Airs for every student K through 12.
Why the hell you giving a kindergartner a MacBook?
So whenever we got COVID,
so they can do AMI work.
What do they do? Color on it?
Yeah,
probably
with crayons.
Well, kids nowadays have these things.
I don't know that kindergartners get the laptops, but for sure they're for junior high and high school students.
Yeah. Kids can use them though, because like kids nowadays they have these things like my niece. She'll watch videos on YouTube of kids playing with toys instead of just playing with toys.
Yeah.
What the hell is that?
Yeah, like kids doing toy reviews are
kids have phones and computers earlier now because
they monetize that stuff.
Yeah,
and their parents.
That's my granddaughter. She gets high and watches YouTube videos. What can I say? She's 4. She gets high.
I'm just kidding. Block there, buddy.
I'm totally kidding. And that's something else I want to say is, I'm sure I sound like parent of the year. I'm also somebody who's trying to work in addiction studies, but I'm also the point I've tried to make with my speaking about marijuana and it's all the stuff that goes along with it is I'm an advocate for it when it's used in a proper and consistent way, not to excess, not to the detriment of others, but in a prescribed and focused, consistent way. I'm sitting here with my son. I'm not saying, hey son, go get blazed. That's not what I'm saying. But
will do.
But I'm also not telling him that he's a terrible person if he partakes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
If y'all think you got a problem, there's people. I'm saving the seat for you.
And that's
all just about responsibility.
I have always told him, whatever you do with responsibility. Make sure that you're healthy and you're happy first and foremost. Don't do anything that's putting yourself at risk or your safety or safety of others. You can't do that.
I think it's just all about good intentions and a good mindset. Just keeping a good head on your shoulders. You can try things, but just don't fuck it up. Because it's not worth it.
Check your motives.
Yeah.
That's a big thing I've taken from this. That I hadn't thought of. I knew like your mindset is incredibly important when you take it, but your motives, why you're doing it, equally maybe more than.
Yeah, I think those bad motives or even a bad mindset or anything. I think that's what the detriment comes from with like. You end up just being a stoner on the couch all the time, because you want to have, like, you put yourself in that position, It's I think it's less about the weed and more about you, at that point.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
it's your route of escape.
There's,
That could be a lot.
To get a job, you still have to take a piss test to get, you know what I mean?
Right, and that's
so what's your what's your man?
I know what you're
Priorities.
looking for.
Yes.
Priorities. You have to.
My brain.
Yeah,
What are
you
your
have to have your
priorities? Do you
priorities,
want to
yeah.
maintain a job and a living and
your motivation and your
and a level of
decisions have to be.
lifestyle for you and the people around you and people that depend on you? That might not even be a family. That might not be kids or a
Right.
spouse. That might be roommates.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you want to do what's more important? Just like you said, getting high and laying around on the couch, or just being responsible?
Yeah, I mean, you have to make that decision for yourself.
And I think this is cool because we've got 6 guys sitting here, and we're all in different situations. But we're all in situations that a lot of people out there can relate to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that goes beyond, like, for me, the recovery part of it. But, like, my job, I get rammed more than a pro athlete. I mean, dude, I can't tell you how many drug tests I've taken in the last 5 years.
Dude, there was
Go ahead.
a couple of times we had a good player throwing a fit and just cussing, screaming, hollering, and Tim Riley walks up to me and he's like, we're going to need you to go take a random drug test this afternoon. And I'm like, are you sure that's all that random?
Your
there,
production
Tim?
is too high. You might be on amphetamines.
Yeah. Or I saw you screaming at that guy from 5 machines down.
It comes with the personal responsibility thing. Yeah, you if it's going to affect, legal, if it's going to cause legal issues or employment issues or gainful living issues, then obviously you have to decide that it's not worth it.
And so that's the thing. When
I worked in healthcare. I'm sorry, one last thing before I forget. I worked in healthcare prior to my illness, and during that times when I traveled to Denver and I saw the culture and I saw everything that around legal recreational use. I have no problems with that. Everybody to each their own, whatever.
Yeah.
And jokes were made that you're going to Colorado, you're going to get randomed as soon as you come home, come back, and with that in mind, whether I would have liked to try to experiment it or whatever, even though it's been since my early 20s since I have, at the forefront of my mind is it's not worth it. I have a job and I have a family to take care of.
Yeah.
Well, that's like when we were in Jamaica. I mentioned it earlier. Amidst all of the grass that was there, I didn't smoke because I was getting ready to graduate college, and my first job was already confirmed at the Arkansas Department of Corrections. And that's one of the first things I had to do when I got back to the state was take a drug test to get hired. And so I was like, okay, I could do this, but like, no, I was just in Jamaica, like no big deal, or I could just not risk it. And it turns out I popped hot on my drug test anyways because I've been taking gabapentin for a nerve problem. And so I popped hot for benzos. I was like, I promise I'm not a pillhead. And they're like, well, you sure?
Not what the test.
And I hadn't had one for like almost a whole month, and so like I had to like go back and prove that I had the prescription. So it turns out I could have just probably blazed up in Jamaica anyways, and been fine. But
I've dealt with during this time. I've dealt with gabapentin, and I would much rather. I think
Yes.
pot would help me much more.
yes,
than
it didn't help me at all.
Yeah,
it didn't
me either.
It didn't do anything at all.
You're going to find that
But yeah, and so it's making that conscious choice because like I knew I was gonna have to take a drug test. I knew pretty certain I was gonna get the job, and I knew before I got the job I had to take a drug test. And so like people think Jamaica, it's synonymous with cannabis, but it's just as illegal there as it Bob Marley, dude.
Yeah, man.
Bob Marley's the face of Jamaica.
Yeah, okay. But it's just as illegal in Jamaica as it is in the States. So in Jamaica, unless you're a Rastafarian, that's a religion, you're not allowed to smoke it or grow it. But as long as you're a Rastafarian, you can grow one plant. I think it's 5 plants, and you can carry 1 ounce on your person at all times. Nobody follows that rule. The police don't enforce it. But it's just illegal there. But yeah, pretty much. But kind of like you said, James, I had to make that choice. Like as much as I may have wanted to, I was like, it's not worth. Because I'm starting my career, like I'm starting to be professionally employed. Like this is what I need to do, and just it goes back to kind of what we've talked about all night. It's headspace. Mm-hmm. It's you got to know where you are, and at that point I was like, yeah, I can't do this. Like I just can't do it. So plus we were around enough people who did it that it was just fun in general. It was a blast. So
Y'all ready to wrap it up?
I reckon.
Yeah, I got all mine out before my brain went to sleep. So.
Yeah. So. Yeah, we're over an hour and a half here, and so. All right, guys. Appreciate the input. especially James. Appreciate all the just a thoughtful, informative.
Yeah, I talked a whole lot, and I talked over you guys.
No,
Sorry
you
about that.
do that.
No,
not at all.
You probably
That was
have more
awesome.
good stuff to say than we do.
But
It's very rare. So.
yeah,
No, it's good to see you again, man. We've all been locked down and kind of
yeah.
keeping apart. Especially, you got the compromised immune system. It's good to see you again.
A good
man.
social distancing tip is to not share a microphone with a person where you're lip to lip.
Hey, you're sitting by your son, so like I always say, if
Oh, I'm not worried about
if
that.
your family, it ain't queer.
Well, that needs
So, that's a good way to shut her off there.
That's Rosebud, Arkansas. Right there.
Now they know where we live. We're this big. They'd
Oh,
find
I mean,
If anybody
not
from
Rosebud.
if anybody
Not
from
that.
Cooperative
Clinton.
Extension listens to this, no, I don't support any of this.
You're not that guy.
I'm social distancing. Wash your hands.
Yeah.
You're not that guy, man.
No, I'm glad you. It's good. It was a good way to give us an update on where you're at with your recovery and everything. You know, and it's a heck yeah, it's a hot topic around here right now.
It's not about me. We're talking about the weeds.
Yeah. Well, you know what I mean. It's something that we really needed to get used to because it's here now. You know?
Yeah.
Well, this is
Not recreational, but medical. You know.
You
I
know-
know tons of people go to the dispensary and they got cards, so they're kind of already blurring the lines on.
Oh, yeah, that's
the-
one last thing I wanted to say. We were talking about quantities earlier. Do you know, and you guys might know this, but since I've been researching it and looking into it, you can buy 2.5 ounces every 14 days.
Yeah.
2 weeks.
What kind of partying are you doing as a
Dude.
marijuana user? I'll never touch that much.
And
The
the thing
good thing
is-
is I don't have to buy that much.
Right.
So
Like you can get 2.5, but those strains are like crazy, like high quality, a lot of
Right.
THC. You see all the like
That's that
crystallization, all the keef. You know,
Yeah.
like, you're gonna get a bang for
You're
your
getting
buck.
what you-
But then you're getting 2.5 ounces. And
What are you doing, man?
it's like you're
Hey,
not
man,
here anymore. You're
Some guys like to smoke all day.
yeah.
they're trying to get
right.
folks trumped up on a cell charge.
I mean, it's literally gonna be like Cheech and Chong up in smoke. You know, they're sitting there parked in the middle of the freeway. Like,
That
you're
that
getting
whole
so
van
much.
was made of weed.
Hey, speaking of which movie
The
was
van
it
was
where-
made out of weed. That
where
was
they're
awesome.
like they're driving. And he's like, "Hey man, I think this Mountain Dew's gone flat." And he's like, "That's not Mountain Dew. That's my sister's piss." Anyway,
I think that's the same movie.
Call it there.
But the last
Was it? I
thing,
don't know.
I just
I don't know
for
if it's up in smoke.
James and Finch, for both of y'all, this is a few times that we've talked just about just issues and things y'all are going through, and y'all, you know, I mean, I just appreciate y'all being honest. I appreciate your friendship
Oh, hell's
very
no.
much.
Appreciate it.
So, all right.
Thanks, man.
Later. Bye. Thanks to James and John for helping put this thing together. You can find them on Instagram and Twitter and subscribe to their YouTube channel at Quittering. Just want to say thank you for listening to the Dodge That Bullet podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or the Google Play Store, wherever you listen to your podcast at DTB Pod or Dodge That Bullet podcast. Also, you can check out our website at dtbpod.podbean.com, or you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at DTBpod. If you like what you hear, feel free to share or tell your friends. Any support is greatly appreciated, and we'll see you next time.
Bye. Love you.